Have you ever thought about the possibility that we're just not smart enough to solve aging and that our way to solve aging is to create smarter humans? Anatoly definitely has. So my guest today is Anatoly Karlin, and Anatoly is advocating for human intelligence enhancement. He's trying to create a world with smarter humans. For this, he is in the process of founding a decentralized autonomous organization, a DAO, that is called Sophia DAO. So like Sophia, the goddess of wisdom. Sophia DAO. Today we talked about Anatoly's background, his work and his motivation for his work, and of course also what implication this would have, like human intelligence enhancement, the different ways of how we can make humans smarter or how we can make new smart humans, and what this would mean. So without further ado, enjoy my conversation with Anatoly Karlin. Welcome, okay. Anatoly.
Hello, it's a pleasure and honor to be on your podcast.
Yes, very nice that we finally found the time in the last week of Zala City to talk to each other. I plan today to talk to you about your project Sophia DAO, in general about like human intelligence enhancement, like kind of your projects. But I would like to start out a bit like with your background. Like, can you maybe tell a bit like where you're coming from? Like, what did you do before you decided to work on intelligence enhancement, and like, what's your background?
Okay, very briefly, rootless cosmopolitan, left Russia at the age of 6, left
Cosmopolitan?
Russia, rootless cosmopolitan.
What does it mean?
Kind of like somebody who's not attached to any places. And I was born in Russia, then I left when I was 6, spent a decade in the UK, then a decade in California, then went back to Russia for a few years, then became a digital nomad, and now spend my time in places like Berlin and Zala City and whatever. That's my quick background. The academic background is economics. But one thing that's always interested me a lot is intelligence research, psychometrics. I've encountered the Chidlin, those national IQ tables back in my late teens. That was also when I started reading about transhumanism. The singularity is near is what that pilled me on transhumanism and life extension, amongst other things. Really the combination of those three sort of interests, I suppose, economics, economic history, plus intelligence research, plus transhumanism, has, I suppose, defined my intellectual journey to a large extent.
So you were traveling like from childhood, like with your parents in the beginning, and then you started traveling yourself?
You could think of it that way, although I wasn't really traveling much when I was like until like the past year or so. Yeah.
How long are you a digital nomad now?
2 years approximately.
2 years. Yeah. Okay. Like, have you been living in more like pop-up cities, like for example Zala City, where we're now, or what did you like? Where did you travel in the last 2 years?
I mean, it's been a mix. I was in the Balkans, Turkey, Morocco, but yeah, I mean, I've also spent a bunch of time in the so-called network states, or really network societies at this stage, because I don't own any land yet, apart from Prosper, I suppose. Anyway, I spent a month at Zuzulu, which sort of like really opened up my eyes to this. I was familiar with Balaji before that, but I think that what really attracts me to these network societies is that they combine many of the features of a small village and a megapolis, in that with a megapolis you have a large concentration of interesting people, of so-called elite human capital, if you want to call them that. It's kind of like a meme, slightly famous on Twitter. So you have a lot of people to talk to, but they live in different parts of town, so you need to travel to meet up with them, so it's not trivial. But the average city dweller suffers from some degree of anomie.
What?
Anomie, social anomie, this sort of sense of being lost in this vast conurbation, social jungle.
So like in a big city, because there's so much going on.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, what is the word? Anomie?
Anomie, yes.
Okay, never heard this.
And then you have the solidarity that you see in small villages. I mean, some villages anyway. I mean, it's sort of like a bit of a romantic notion, but at least people do know each other. But they It's perhaps not politically correct to observe this, but they're far less interesting. I mean, even Karl Marx was writing about the idiocy of rural life a century ago. These kinds of network societies, in my opinion, like what's their main selling point from a social perspective, not so much even like from a political one or economic one, but just from a social perspective, is that they combine many of the best features of big cities and village life, traditional village life, without suffering from many of their demerits.
Okay.
And after Zuzalu, I spent 3 months in Vitalia. That's a pop-up city devoted to making that optional. That's been, it's still ongoing.
Yeah.
Within Prospera, it's a ZA, a special economic zone in Honduras. So they've recently had some problems because the constitutional court there ruled that they are unconstitutional with retroactive effect. So that's like one of the risks of doing business, I suppose, in third world countries with a weak rule of law, that you can just say that, oh, you're illegal. And but and then there's now I'm at Zela, which is another approach. The political ambitions are much more modest. I mean, than none really as such. But because obviously Germany isn't going to make this into a special economic
for people listening, Zela City is just like a pop-up city where we're in the middle of Berlin. People that want to work on solving aging come together. We live together for 6 weeks in this case.
It's a glorified group house, but we like crypto and decentralization, so we have an inflated opinion of ourselves.
Exactly. Okay, so I would like. Can you tell a bit about your experience in Vitalia? Because like you said, you were there for a month, and for
3 months.
3 months actually.
January to March.
How the actual pop-up city wasn't 3 months, right?
The most intense activity was in the first 2 months, and then it kind of activity dropped away because at the end of the day, most people do have social networks, and most people are not in a position to go to a tropical island and spend a very large percentage of the year there. And I think it's natural, and I think this kind of illustrates the need not just to have big centralized hubs, relatively centralized hubs like Vitalia, but also to have a network of nodes, with Zela hopefully being one of the forerunners of this. And presumably you get look at the sort of the major cities with the highest concentrations of things like startups per capita and DeSci communities per capita, this kind of like demographic of people who like funny internet money and living forever and like all the other transhumanist stuff. And you have a look at which cities have the biggest concentrations of them. So US, San Francisco, New York, maybe Miami and Houston and Austin for the people who can't really afford to live in New York City. Then Europe, Berlin and London are the two most obvious ones. East Asia, you're probably talking about Singapore and Tokyo for starters. India, perhaps Bangalore, there's Zugrama early next year. Have this network in place, and maybe also not just the big cities, but have a beach location and a mountain location for those for people who want to have a holiday in skiing and surfing.
So how was it to be in Vitalia? Do you think there was something missing, because this is on a tropical island? How I heard from some people that is very remote, and that you're not really, you don't have really access to if you're sick, there's no doctor. If you're all of that, how was that for you?
I mean, at the end of the day, Honduras is a third world country with a GDP per capita of $3,000. So you're not going to have a very functional country. And obviously Roatan, which is the island on which Prospera is based, it's got 100,000 people. There are some rich American tourists, and there's obviously amenities and services that cater specifically to them. But you're not really going to get the amenities that you can expect in a functional first world cities for very obvious reasons. So yes, if you go there, you probably wouldn't you shouldn't be expecting elite healthcare if you have an emergency. I don't think there's even a single cinema. I mean, I'm not saying that it's bad. No, I'm not saying that at all. I mean, obviously, there's a ton of things to do. There's surfing. It's famous for its coral reefs.
Yeah,
Scuba diving. Yes. Well, no, not surfing. Yeah, scuba diving. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I don't think there's any surfing there. Sorry. There's like some jungle parks with like monkeys where you can talk with the monkeys and parrots and like parrots are very intellectual animals. But so there is a ton of stuff to do. But really, what you're going there is for like the key selling point is that to be amongst like-minded people who you can randomly bump into anyone on the street and you have something to talk about.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. What have you done before you became a digital nomad?
I was a journalist, a blogger. I mean, I did some journalistic gigs and some PR stuff. It's not really directly connected. Back in the US, I had a business for a short while in importing stuff from China, but there's it's not really very interesting or relevant to this.
Okay. So then let's maybe go to Sophia now. Can you present like what is your vision like or like what is this idea?
Okay, I want to start off with intelligence. What is intelligence and why is it important? So one of my favorite definitions of intelligence is what you need to do when you don't know what to do. And I think that really gets at the heart of what it is about because you can have a routine or an instruction manual, and most people can follow it. But if you are trying to solve some kind of novel problem, then there's only a very limited number of people, due simply to the bell curve nature of intelligence, that are capable of solving the harder problems. And as such, their services command a high premium. This is probably, if you sort of go by the work of economists like Gareth Jones, for instance, that's probably the ultimate reason why rich countries are so much like richer than third world countries, even though in absolute terms, the like average national IQ might only be like like a standard deviation higher.
What is the reason that they are richer? What do you say?
There's many more people whose services command a very high premium because they can solve classes of problems that other people cannot, and their incidence is much higher in a place like Germany than it would be in a place like Honduras, for instance.
But you mean that the people there are actually smarter, or they just have the jobs where they require?
You can do intelligence tests, standardized international tests. There's like it's not necessarily just IQ tests, but for instance, the OECD they done the PISA tests every 4 years.
That is
for international student assessments, and they show the same pattern.
But I mean, that's just for level of education, right?
Yeah, I mean it's a big question, obviously. Obviously, nobody would deny that you need education to actualize your intelligence to the full potential, and you also need some other stuff like preferably you want like good nutrition in your childhood. Probably the fact that nutrition and disease load became a lot lower over the past century probably explains the so-called Flynn effect. The Flynn effect is the increase in IQ scores that we have observed over the past century, although it seems to have capped out at some level in the first world.
It's not. We don't.
It's no longer increasing, yeah.
Oh, okay.
And some indications that it started going down.
For how long is it not increasing anymore?
Probably like there's many different studies across different countries. I mean, in the developing world, it's still increasing, although not at a very high rate. In the developed world, it seems to have peaked on average at around 2000 and started going down around 2020.
Oh, okay.
It remains to be seen whether that's going to be a pattern.
If that's actually. Okay.
And but yeah, going back to, I don't sort of like want to get sort of too diverted into this topic, into this sort of like politically controversial sphere, because really my kind of goal, what I see as my main goal, is to increase intelligence levels across the board. And the ultimate reason why that is important is Again, like intelligence tells you what you can do when you don't know what to do. This goes to the heart of the innovation problem. To innovate, you need to solve new problems. You don't need to like just write a new paper or like those academics do, and just like publish industrial amounts of papers that don't really say anything new, but get them citations. You actually need to solve novel problems that result in real world improvements, like the usable dockets, for instance, like a big development, SpaceX. There's been haven't really been like any of these step jumps in life extension, sadly. And but if you want to solve problems like life extension, then you need smart people to work there. You need many more of them.
Intelligence.
Yeah, and at some point it's going to become a recursive process, because if you could also figure out how to increase the intelligence either of future generations, although there's a lag time, you first need those children to grow up, or if you could somehow figure out how to use new topics or cyber or augmentation or something, or even adult genetic therapies to increase adult intelligence, then we can start like having more smart people right now. But I mean, obviously that's much harder with adults than with new generations. Yeah, you need more smart people, and you need to divert a bigger percentage of them into the problems that are important, which I consider to be increasing intelligence even further, so that it becomes the recursive process. And into life extension, so that people can actually not die, which is a good thing in itself. But also because, well, I mean, you sort of like, if these smart people don't die, then that would be very good. Would be very nice to have John von Neumann still around, or whatever.
So I was just thinking, like, what about AI? Because like with AI, we are at the moment creating. If everything goes well, we are actually creating a lot of intelligence.
Absolutely,
like, crazy amounts of intelligence. But you are focused on human intelligence enhancement specifically. Why that?
I think there's two important things. First, there's probably hundreds of thousands of people working on AI in some capacity. There's maybe like a couple hundred, 300 maybe, professional psychometrists, intelligence researchers in the world, judging by attendance at professional conferences like ECIR. And the people and the percentage of those who are actually working on not just sort of like studying it and understanding it, it's kind of like aging and life extension. There's also people who just look at it in intelligence research and try to figure out what it is. And then there's a much narrower subset of people who are actually working on how we get it up. That's the first thing. There's sort of like this big disparity. So what if AI progress comes to a stop? What if there's like that data wall that people keep talking about? I mean, to be honest, if I had to bet, I would say that we'll get to AGI within the next 5 years. I mean, I'm a situational awareness pilled. I agree with Leopold that Eichenbrenner that most likely, I mean, these problems are going to get solved, and we are going to get AGI, and the AGI, if it is correctly aligned, which is a very big open question whether it will be aligned, but if it is aligned, then it will probably just scour like all the literature and stuff and solve biology within pretty quickly, and make a utopian to us. But I do think that it's good to have an insurance policy against that happening. Like we just might not get there, or we might get there and the AGI decides to kill all biology, which is sort of like, you know, some people like Eliza Yudkowsky think that it's quite likely. I mean, I keep flipping my own opinion on sort of like AI risks. And then there's sort of like the possibility that the AIs become very smart and then just vanish because their like own world is so much more interesting than what biology can offer. Or perhaps there's some kind of geopolitical or like epidemic crisis as a result of misaligned AI. Like imagine one of them creates some kind of pandemic that kills a billion people. Then probably AI will simply be shut down by government fired across the world. So just to cut a long story short, I think it's good to have a backup.
Be diversified.
Backup plan. Yes.
Okay, I see. So what are the possible avenues how you want to increase human intelligence?
Uh, so there's different approaches to this. The most prospective one is simply embryo selection for IQ. How does it work? You have IVF, standard IVF cycles, 10 embryos, say, and there exists, like even now, you can screen them for disease risks. Some countries and communities, like Israel, for instance, they've been doing it for several decades now, and as a result of it, the Ashkenazi Jewish community, which has been is known for its high prior prevalence of certain genetic diseases, they've like collapsed them down to a very low level. Now, but you don't necessarily have to constrain yourself to just selecting against specific disease risks. You can be more ambitious. Obviously, the bioethicists are not big fans of this, but you can do a full genome scan and see compile polygenic scores for the traits that you're interested in. Intelligence being the obvious one. Also, because a lot of other positive traits are
Can do
very strongly
altruism.
correlated with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the nice thing about intelligence is that the existing research suggests that there's no real negative downsides to it, to just like increasing it indefinitely. It tends to result in better health outcomes, like polygenic education scores are literally also one of the best, or if not the best, predictors of lifespan. So again, something that's very relevant to even just to life extension. Now, obviously, if you're speaking about selecting for other traits of personality, you could get into like some thorny territory. Personally, I think if you want to find out more about this, like a good guide on this would be Jonathan Anomaly's book, Creating Future People. But just to quickly summarize, you might have, like, for instance, psychopaths. Society might need some small percentage of psychopaths to like keep things humming, but like if it collapses, if there's too many of them, but some small base level would be good. And also, yeah.
In which way are psychopaths helpful to society?
Well, I mean, you do need some violence specialists, for instance, to keep criminals in check, and also psychopaths might be less respective of social norms, including social norms, but that perhaps keep society back from advancing. There
So
might
they're the
be
ones
some advantages
breaking the
Yes,
pattern.
yes,
Okay.
yeah, the higher IQ functional psychopaths at least. Yeah, so again, I mean, like even something as like obviously bad as psychopathy might have some like evolutionary benefit if it's like a small percentage of the population. At any rate, I mean, evolution didn't select psychopathy out of the population, so obviously it does have some evolutionary benefit in our ancestral history. Another obvious example would be the trade-offs between having altruists and free riders. Now, free riders might do better on average because if there's a like a functional society with a lot of altruists who do things like put the shopping cart back into the easel when they finish shopping, I mean that's a social good. That's this is the reason why like Zurich in Switzerland, you can go to a city fountain and drink the water there.
Yeah.
Like it depends on a lot of people just doing their job correctly and having a conscientious attitude towards life. But if you have, but this also involves a lot of these altruists being willing to expend their own personal resources to punish free riders who don't contribute to the common weal, even though it sort of like reduces their own chances of success. Now, many parents might want to select more for free riding kinds of traits because that would be something that's good for the individual, even though it's a social not a social benefit. It's the opposite of a social benefit. But if you get sufficiently large amounts of people selecting for free riding traits, then you could end up with a pretty dysfunctional society. And I think this is something that we will eventually have to think about, and have to, I mean, I hate to use regulation, the word regulation, but probably some kind of mechanism will, hopefully decentralized one, would have to be developed to sort of contain the growth of traits that are personally, individually good, but socially bad. But this is something, consideration that's very much lies in the future, like 50 years from now.
Also, to the regulation, like, what do you think about the risk of creating uniformity? Like, if everybody is selecting like the same traits, like if because like everybody wants high intelligence, probably like I don't want my child to be a psychopath. I don't think many people want their child to be a psychopath.
Yeah,
so like probably like most people will choose like very similar traits. Like we were talking and you said like probably in the future there will be like you will like have an app where you can see the different embryos and they will have like different
there's actually a company in Stealth Node that's currently working on it. So I mean, if listeners are interested, feel free to sort of like get in touch with me if you're serious about this, and I can let you know more about it.
So in this app you can see like this embryo has like, it's of course all probabilistic, so like this amount of intelligence, this amount of this other trait, this amount of this other trait. Like how do you think about this risk that every one will choose kind of the same? So we will like go away from the evolutionary
So you're concerned about a sort of psychological monoculture.
Yes, and also physical, like everything. Like if everybody selects kind of the same things.
Okay, I mean, to be honest, I mean, on some traits, as I mentioned, on intelligence, I don't think there's going to be a problem if everybody becomes 175 IQ or higher. I mean, it would sort of make us people who are smart today less relatively privileged. But I mean, to be honest, the social benefits from this are going to be so vast that this is something that I would be very happy to pay. Just as I'd be very happy if, like in the life extension community, there's people who would be very happy if a competitor discovered life extension and not them, because they would still sort of benefit from this extremely. And plus, like if they become smarter, then they can like again, it's all cumulative. They can figure out how to make me smarter and bring me to their level, hopefully. I mean, I don't see the thing with intelligence being a problem, and I don't see the problem with actually with this being a big issue with health. I think it's going to be a almost uniform good for people to become healthy and not suffer from genetic diseases, and to be beautiful models, male and female. So I mean, obviously amongst women, having being not as pretty as other girls is a source of depression for many women in particular, because sadly, looks sort of like rated more important by the opposite sex for women than for men. So again, and perhaps if all the women become supermodels, I won't complain about it. And but on the other hand, there's also like many more of them who are like already very pretty. They would sort of like be more incentivized to do interesting stuff instead of just coasting by life on their good looks. So human beauty, health, intelligence. I mean, I think those things that can be improved pretty much without negative consequences. I do agree with you, though, that there does have to be some kind of mechanism, most likely, for there to be a distribution of personalities. Conscientious, highly conscientious people, adjusted for IQ, they tend to make more money. But
what do you say?
People who are higher in conscientiousness. But that's also a trait that's less amenable to high innovation, because with innovation you're looking for geniuses, and the traits of a genius isn't just having a high intelligence, but it's also having a personality suite that translates into a high level of nonconformism, the ability to go against the tide.
And
but it moves like Galileo. Also the willingness and nonconformism is itself a function of some degree of neuroticism and disagreeableness. So you like the Pope says one thing, then you have to like have the courage and the pride to say no, it actually works like this.
So there's a risk of, because the conscientiousness is one of the most beneficial traits,
Yes.
like next to
Yeah.
intelligence,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
also for your personal health, like
Yeah.
for your success in life, for like so many things. Conscientiousness is a positive trait. But you say like if we only select for conscientious people, we will have trouble. Like it might decrease our chances of having geniuses that really make breakthrough discoveries.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, to be honest, I mean, eccentrics are just interesting people in general, more interesting than normies.
What?
Like eccentrics, like sandal wearing, like people with weird ideas about stuff, which are sometimes wrong. Like Newton spent the later part of his life doing calculations about how big Noah's Ark was, like total waste of time, but he was doing useful stuff as well. So they're kind of like very high variance individuals. But occasionally they get some things right, and they're certainly more interesting to observe and to talk to. So I mean, I think it would definitely be a tragedy if everybody was to select for economic, like maximizing economic utility function. And again, it's going to be a debate how we could sort of like arrange future societies to have a mix of personality traits that society can function but also innovate at the same time. Perhaps you could have prediction markets on this, what would an ideal society look like, and have differential levels of subsidies for choosing one trait or the other, independence on like how the dynamic picture is evolving.
That would be actually like way better than like strict rules if you like subsidize certain times, because you say like, okay, people are always choosing conscientiousness and we need some like lower. Actually, I'm not even sure if that's true.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, I'm not sure it's either two. I mean, if I was selecting doing a character creation RPG screen for my kids, I would sort of like want them to be fun to talk to, and so I would kind of like try to bump up their nonconformism quotient, even if it comes at the expense of predicted economic success.
But I mean, nonconformism.
Yeah.
You could bump probably at some point you can increase nonconformism at the same time as you still have high conscientiousness. Like they are linked in a way, but you could probably separate them out a bit. Like
I mean, I would imagine that they're sort of distinct kind of sub-factors. So there's sort of like a general factor of personality, but you also have like this sort of like conscientiousness branch, and you have this sort of disagreeable branch. So I mean, you could sort of increase both, but I do think that there'll be situations in which they conflict with each other, because it's very easy to imagine where the conscientious thing to do and but it is moving impulse conflict with each other.
What are the other ways you like? We're now talking about embryo selection.
Yeah.
So that would be intelligence enhancement specifically for like people that are not born yet.
Yes.
But like I would also like to increase my intelligence.
Yes,
like,
that's
you
good
probably would like to increase
yeah.
yours as well.
Yeah.
Like I think there's first of all a big economic incentive for that, and second of all, like it would be like embryo selection. It will take at least 20 years for this to have an effect. What are the pathways that you are looking at for
adult?
Yes, for adult intelligence.
I mean, it's important because we want to become smarter, and I mean, if we're just doing it to our kids, then it's going to take frankly 20 years to start having an effect. And 20 years is 2045. That's when like the original prediction of the singularity by Ray Kurzweil. So we do kind of want to get it faster. But the problem is with adult gene editing is that, well, I mean, you first need to get much sort of more efficacious gene delivery mechanisms. Right now, it just sort of doesn't work at a very large scale. I mean, there's been a very good post on Les Dong by Gene Smith. That's a pseudonym, but I think it was called something like "Significant Increases in Intelligence Amongst Adults," something like that. Yeah, just search for those words on Les Dong, and so there are pathways to possibly increasing adult gene intelligence to gene therapy, but I suspect that this is going to require a lot more work and development for in the field of gene therapy. And this is also separate from the other problem, a very big problem, which is that amongst adults, many genes have already expressed themselves. So how do you sort of like, even if you do change the genes, it doesn't sort of provoke or feed like a sudden spurt of neural growth. So there's also this problem. So this is again a possible way through which cognitive enhancement and life extension might be interlinked, because life extension in particular, we kind of like are even more concerned that this is something that we as adults can benefit from. So yeah, I mean, there's so there's gene editing, as I said, for adults. Then there's other approaches. There's new topics. Sadly, there's been no new topic that has been shown to sustainably increase G. So the general factor of intelligence. There's some which have increased focus for some period of time. There's some which increase creativity. Some of them have negative long-term effects, but there hasn't been discovered any compound which sustainably for like you take it now and a year later you still have you start performing statistically higher on intelligence test. Final approach would be the kind of Neuralink approach. Like in Deus Ex, like get chips integrated with AI, stuff like this. The reasons why this is technically challenging have been described pretty well by Nick Bostrom in Superintelligence. Bandwidth is basically very low, so brain-machine interfaces. It's an open question how high they can get the bandwidth.
Neuralink is kind of pushing. Pushing a lot there.
I mean, obviously, there's Neuralink, and there's also the company set up by Kazakhs at Vitalia, which is a more of a centralized kind of approach to augmentation. I mean, I'm very supportive. I like the Deus Ex Cyberpunk 2077 aesthetic. It's very cool, but I'm kind of a bit dubious about how much it can do.
I would personally, like, from my personal intuition, I would say it's like this human intelligence enhancement by putting a chip into our brain and connecting ourselves, like adding computational ability by actually having extra storage or having connecting your brain to that is a way. It's a hard path, but it's a way, quote unquote, easier path than, for example, whole body gene editing to increase intelligence. Because let's say we figure it out, which is a big, it will take a while to figure out whole body gene editing. We have to also figure out what exactly we have to edit to actually increase intelligence, which is so significantly increase intelligence. We have to figure out how to edit without destroying something else that is important, and which is super hard. And we might have one standard deviation or something increasement. But if we actually figure out how to connect our brain to a computer, there's essentially no limit. You can go exponential.
I think again the bandwidth question is central to this, because quite frankly, I think that the bandwidth you get from putting this information into your Obsidian system, you showed your Obsidian system, which has these, which is this neural network of the thousands of nodes that you made, which functions as your second brain. You can literally, my guess is that you can literally exchange information with that system faster than you can with Neuralink right now. By an order or two of magnitude.
That's possible, but right now, I
totally support this. Good luck to all of you guys working on this.
Okay, so you think those are why did you decide that you want to focus on the embryo selection? It's right that you want to focus on that mainly, right?
As I said, I think that the embryo selection it's literally something that you can do right now. There's actually a company in stealth mode that's going to be going public possibly next year. That's offering these services. So And if enough people start doing this, according to opinion polls, I believe 38% of Americans in 2023 said that they would be open to genetic selection if it increased their chances of their kid getting into Harvard. And 28% were even willing to do genetic editing, which is like much more radical. Again, it's something that's actually feasible, and with better genetic editing technologies, you can start doing genetic editing. You like the limits of just selection from a standard IVF cycle of say 10, 12, 20 embryos is perhaps half a standard deviation, which is very non-trivial. And if like half the population starts doing it, then that's going to have huge effects. What does half a standard deviation mean in practical terms? That's the difference in the average IQ of the founding stock of West Virginia, which is like this population that's like has economic problems, has opioid addiction, doesn't produce any science, and between Massachusetts, which I think hosts something like 3 of the top 10 universities in the world.
For me, it's always, if you talk about like, okay, this country or this city has this average IQ and this outcomes, and this has like, couldn't it just be education that you, because education levels are, I think they're strongly correlated with the IQ,
the causality, yes. I mean, obviously, education allows you to actualize your IQ potential. However, it doesn't really go into the verse. And I mean, just to like illustrate this very quickly, you can have a look at a chart of GDP per capita, for instance, and the average IQ of a country. Now, there's a very close correlation. But you can say that correlation is not causation. But what I find really fascinating is the pattern, and it's something that I think is really intuitive if you explain it this way. Which countries are smarter than they are wealthy? This almost without exception are countries which had a communist 20th century. So that's Eastern Europe. China, you can see it in the example of Germany. Eastern Germany is much poorer than West Germany. Are East Germans dumber than West Germans? Probably not. Are they less educated than West Germans? Actually, no, I don't think so. I mean, the communists were pretty assiduous about education. China, especially, is a very major downwards outlier. And then on the other hand, you have some countries which are much richer than they are smart, and they are almost without exception massive oil or resource exporters per capita. Countries like the United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and so they've developed a wealthy economy. They now spend this enables them to now spend a ton on education, even hire foreigners to educate them. And they actually did become smarter after doing this, but they came nowhere near to converging to sort of first world IQ levels. And this is one of my sort of most intuitive arguments for why the causality does go both ways, but it goes much more from IQ to education than the other way down.
The things, I see. At the same time, it feels so. This argument, I see your whole point for more intelligence is better because like even if this argument wouldn't hold, it's better to have like smarter children because like obviously like if we have smarter children, like we'll figure out more stuff, like as long as it doesn't come with like some negative traits that we're maybe not aware of, which is possible. But like if you say like if you directly compare countries and say like okay, this country is at this point because of their average IQ, it feels like there are so many other reasons that like some countries. For me, it's not clear at all that there is causation there. Like causation that the IQ caused the country to be at this level of GDP. Like there are so many other factors that cause that. Like to reduce it down to IQ, it feels kind of oversimplified, even with that model, with the
Well, I mean, my argument is simple. Countries with a normal capitalist pro-market history in the 20th century. The cluster of countries that are around 100 IQ level. So East Asia, like Western Europe, the United States, they've converged to the same spot more or less. The Americans are richer, probably because they are big economies of scale and like they attract a lot of very talented immigrants, and they're also more economically free than Europe. So they perform better than Europeans. But again, I mean, these are not sort of seminal vast differences like you see between the first world and the second world and the third world. Latin America, I mean, again, they've had like some bad regimes, but they were like pro-market regimes. So Chile, for instance, is taken as an example. They've done a very neoliberal kind of very effective economic policy since the late Pinochet. But Chile is actually not like drastically wealthier than Argentina, which is well known for having this is as bad as a market economy gets. I mean, they've been defaulting all the time, doing crazy monetary policies, having inflation all the time, import substitution, but about the same GDP per capita actually at the end of the day, but similar IQs.
Okay. So there are differences in GDP. Similar IQs.
Similar. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's these are questions about which there is actually a big literature, academic literature as concerns causality. You can do multiple regression analysis to sort of weed out which factor explains more. You can look at different possible explanations, such as the average level of economic freedom in the past few decades, or the IQ level, or the like national like institutions, or education, like how much do they spend time in school. And what's very predictable, what's like a very consistent pattern in these economic studies, Heiner Lindemann does them, is that Garrett Jones, is that the cognitive abilities are by far the most kind of succinct.
Even more than like level of education?
Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. Like I would think that like, yeah, the actualization aspect might be one thing. Like that we use education to actualize IQ, and if you don't have enough education, like I don't, like, I'm not sure that some countries are actually like more like less intelligent, but like maybe it's just that because of their level of education, they like don't have, like their intelligence wasn't actualized. And of course, if we like distribute IQ tests and they have like, I don't know, like I saw on your slides there were like some African countries that are like very low IQ and very low GDP, right?
Yes.
And like for me, it like, I see like it might be possible that it's just like, okay, they don't have the level of education, so there's no way for them to like actualize their IQ, and then we distribute IQ tests. You're like, oh you're quote unquote stupid, so that's why you have like low GDP. And like maybe increasing level of education would be like an easy way to like boost the IQ and like
I mean obviously I mean we're getting into some controversial territory. I'm not very much aware of this. It's sort of like a big debate whether it's mostly culture or mostly genetics that explain intergroup IQ. Well, yeah, I mean that's a controversial statement. Yes. Obviously I support all the stuff to accelerate economic development in Africa. I mean I mostly actually even support like open borders, to be very frank. Since it's sort of like probably the most effective way of accelerating growth at the global level. The question is like if you sort of like, if you like insert first world institution schooling levels in Africa, so average IQ right now is 70. Would it go to 100 and converge to the first world? Or would it only converge to 85, which is the average IQ of African Americans? I mean, that's a controversial topic. It's very interesting, it's something I probably prefer to sort of steer clear of because it's not this central to this. This project.
I find it a bit fascinating, and for people listening, like of course, like we go into like a bit dangerous territory, but like it is interesting. Like if you say like the average IQ levels of some countries in Africa is like 70, which is like, that is like very like crazy to me. Like I wouldn't have thought that. Like it's
Okay. Well, sadly, that is what
yeah.
not just IQ tests, but international standardized assessments tend to show. So
Okay. Okay.
there's some variation within Africa as well. So Kenya typically does pretty well. So you
Of
have
course. Of course.
similar
Yeah.
stuff in
Yeah.
Europe. Switzerland tends to do best. The Balkans tend to do worst. If you're talking about Europe, it's a fascinating
So
topic.
fascinating.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like very fascinating. So you have a project that is called Sophia DAO that you're
Yeah.
starting. Can you maybe tell a bit about that, like what that is and what your plans with that?
Yes, certainly. Just to summarize, I think intelligence is a public good. We should increase it. If we don't, then we might not be smart enough to solve AI alignment and life extension and the problem of declining IQs, possibly even. Tons of benefits to solving it and accelerating it and getting more people to uptake on it, because even if a lot of people start doing embryo selection for IQ, then the gains might not be huge for like at the individual level, but the average will be substantively affected, like perhaps 3 or 5 IQ points per cohort if it's like really prevalent. Not even speaking about like more exotic variants such as direct gene editing and then iterated embryo selection or cloning
Which will come
geniuses
to
or whatever.
market
Yes.
slowly. Yeah.
Yeah. What I want to do with Sophia DAO, it's a centralized autonomous organization that I am hoping to set up. And its goals would be to fund fundamental research in the sphere, acquire IP NFTs, also fund public goods. I think one really big problem is that, we have the UK Biobank, and you can figure out much of the genomics of IQ from it, but still it's 500,000 people. You ideally want millions or even tens of millions of people, and and it uses and also directly linked to IQ tests as opposed to just educational attainment. Educational attainment is very correlated, strongly correlated with IQ for obvious reasons, but IQ is still a crisper measurement of what you want to maximize. Fund public goods, decentralized biobank would be very nice. Also, another kind of related problem, UK Biobank, obviously, it's almost all white people because UK is a mostly European country. You also need like a bigger variety of demographics, because you might find genetic variants that are more prevalent that can only be detected in amongst other ethnicities. Or which are more predictive of intelligence in certain ethnicities as in others. It's offer public benefits for staking Sophia. That would be one thing that we'd be looking at. So, for instance, Vita. If you hold Vita, you get some benefits under the new program which launched a few months ago, like access to new drugs.
Yeah, some discounts.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So how cool would it be if you hold Sophia and you get a discount on like creating a super baby or whatever?
Or some topics or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, or like being first in line for the new prototype of bio augment, mechanical augment that increases your provision access to crypto investors to the sector. Again, I think that this sector might be on the cusp of very big growth in the coming years. It's very much in its intro stages right now. It is where life extension was perhaps a decade ago, I'd say. Provision kind of like access for people at the ground level. Whereas right now, if you sort of want to be if you're bullish on the sector, you need to be really clued in and have insider ties and be a VC.
Yeah, you need also significant amount of money. You can't just be like, 500 euros into that, which Sophia would allow.
Yeah. And the final thing that I want to do with this is to fund culture and media and promote reprogenetics technology and IQ enhancement in general in the media and in culture. So just as an example, for instance, you have films like Gattaca, which portray a world in which there's genetic enhancement as this dystopia where you have a stratification of talent, and the alphas get to rule the roost and the betas and gammas. I mean, this is an old story, and that goes back to Brave New World. And I mean, I think this vision is quite frankly dumb, because our world is already extremely cognitively stratified, and this is the reason. Cognitively stratified. So there's smart people, there's not so smart people, and this translates into like a very large percentage of the economic and social class differences that we see. I think that to the contrary, if this becomes widely available, then there will be perhaps some kind of upper limit to intelligence, at least the limits enabled by the size of our skull. Maybe you can, like, I don't know, knock out a hole and like grow another kind of like compartment. But that is kind of like a physical limit right now. So if anything, I would expect such a society to perhaps even become more equal, in the sense that one of the major the major differential between people kind of gets nullified if the average sort of like intelligence stat goes up from 5 to like 10, as in like an RPG game. And I see parallels with life extension, because with life extension you have this extreme amount of pro-deathism propaganda, even in culture. Harry Potter, like the guy who tries to become immortal, Voldemort.
He's the bad one.
He's a bad hombre. He kills people to set up those Horcruxes in order to not die, and he's very evil I mean, he is, but like a smart person would figure out ways to like do it without the Horcruxes. That would be a much more inspirational story. That's kind of like actually what Yudkowsky alludes to in Harry Potter and the Methods of Rationality, which is a much better book, in my opinion, than the original. Then you have Lord of the Rings, where the only people who become immortal are the Nazgul, and they do that by becoming servants of the Dark Lord Sauron. So again, like seeking eternal life is portrayed as this sort of like defiance of God and the natural order, and is something that will make you into a ghost who is enslaved to evil. And now, why don't you write a story like Boston's Fable of the Dragon Tyrant, where it's actually the people who want to get life extension and get it quicker who are the good guys? I mean, I think that would be very inspirational, and it's something that I'd be happy to read if it was a book or a film or a video game. Likewise, I think that if you could sort of like push creators to do something similar, to also propagandize the virtues of intelligence enhancement. I mean, no reason the whole philosophy really is that it's all part of a single complex, which is that you want people to become healthier, you want them to become smarter, you want them to become longer lived or indefinitely long lived, and you want them to perhaps, like in the more exotic versions, acquire superhuman or like abilities, or even like abilities which are currently limited to animals, like breathing underwater or flying or having the visual acuity of an eagle. So I mean, that's very far futuristic, but again, it's something that I would like. One of my reasons for supporting life extension is that I do want to live to a kind of like biosingularity state, where like switching between like classes is as easy as it is in an RPG game.
So switching between classes means like your abilities, like switching your eyesight, for example.
To be as sharp as an eagle, and seeing how the world looks like, or like perceiving how the world looks like from the perspective of a bat. What's it like to be a bat? One of the classic articles in philosophy. I mean, these kinds of things are endlessly fascinating to me. Frankly, I think that this sort of psychonautic exploration might actually be the last sort of human voyage of exploration, because I'm actually, it's a bit of a controversial statement again, but I know that many people are very much invested in the sphere, into space travel. But the question I keep asking myself, like, what is out there? Probably, well, there's probably aliens, many, like thousands of light years away, perhaps.
Yeah.
But are we ever going to encounter them? I don't know. But mostly it will just be different configurations of plasma and gases and rock, essentially. And I think that might actually get pretty boring fast, especially since this kind of physics you can model on like future supercomputers anyway. But the question of what's it like to be an elephant or a bat or a whale, or other like hypothetical creatures that we can't even envision right now, that might be on different kinds of drugs. Would probably like possibly the last thing we kind of end up doing as part of the human enterprise.
Ooh, that's super fascinating. So actually, like, not exploring the cosmos, but exploring the different possibilities of experience.
Yes,
Like
exactly,
of
yes.
consciousness, the different states of consciousness. Okay, how's that connected to like to Sophia Dao?
That isn't. No.
It's not. It's just like that. Sophia.
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Okay. No. It's.
Yeah.
I love this vision. It's like more of
Okay.
the like transhumanist like future, and like, if I understand you right, it's like that intelligence enhancement is like one of the steps we can take to make sure this future comes into existence.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. And I've watched some of your previous podcasts. You keep mentioning that what is your sort of main reason for wanting life extension? Could you repeat it?
Yeah. Wait, like my
Yes,
main reason.
yes.
So like, I have multiple like, but I have like one philosophical and one just personal. Like philosophically, I would say like, okay, like I'm super curious. I would like to, I don't know, understand the universe, and I think we're way too far. Like we're so far away from understanding anything actually
Yes.
that I don't think we'll make meaningful progress. Okay, maybe we'll make meaningful progress in the next 80 years, like now with AI, but I think that I have way higher chances of experiencing the progress if we manage to not die.
Yes.
So like right now we're like little worms crawling through the dirt. Like it's like that's like my metaphor. Like we don't really understand anything. Like we think we do, but we're so far from understanding how the universe works. Actually, like yes, we need intelligence for that, but like the main bottleneck that I see right now is like that we just die after 80 years.
Yeah, exactly.
So like if we manage to solve that, we have all the time in the world to figure out intelligence enhancement. We have all the time in the world to figure out everything. So like solve the time bottleneck. That's the philosophical way.
Yes.
And like just personal, I just think it's the most
and you want to have a lot of new experiences and to do a lot of projects.
Like the most interesting way to see life. You can also just the argument like you could work on a random project now and then die, or you work on life extension and then you have enough time to work on as many random projects as you want.
And I mean I fully agree with this, and I think this is sort of like where the intelligence enhancement aspect comes into it, because there is a concrete possibility that we might not be smart enough to solve life enhancement, life extension without being smarter. And so that's sort of like the first problem, and also to do a lot of the other stuff that we might do when we have a lot more time to do it. I mean, you can sort of like try different foods and read different books, but there's some classes of problems, like say you, like at the age of 3000 or whatever, you decide you want to understand the proof of the Poincare conjecture or whatever. Well, maybe you're already smart enough for that, but maybe you're not. I mean, I don't think I am. But if I sort of like really start wanting to do this thing, then I could do with a few more standard deviations in IQ. So that's sort of like the other consideration.
Yeah, I think this all converges. Like we need people like you that are pushing for intelligence enhancement, because it will have a downstream effect on all the other problems that we want to solve.
Yes.
Like at the same time, we need people working on AI, because this might be the point that brings us over the edge for intelligence enhancement, for longevity, for like all our problems. Like we need intelligence to solve those problems. So if it's intelligence in the computer, if it's intelligence in humans, super useful. At the same time, we still need people that actually work on radical life extension, because otherwise, if we don't figure this out and we don't figure out intelligence in time, like we'll just die. So it's like all interconnected. We need people working on all the parts, and I really appreciate that, especially you, as you say, like you don't see the point in working maybe in AI, because it's like there are so many people working there, and in intelligence enhancement, like you might be one of the only, like one of the few peoples in the world that advocate for embryo selection for intelligence, like as a main thing. So like it's really like you chose a bottleneck where there is not so many people working on. So you actually have a bigger impact. Which I really appreciate that.
And I mean, just to develop on this point statistically, I mean, I think this is a very useful theme. Again, AI, there's probably hundreds of thousands, I would guess, of people who are in AI at some level, maybe several tens of thousands of active researchers, and several thousands of people who are like working on the LLM paradigm. That's sort of like most perspective at this point. Compared to that, you have probably a few thousands of biogerontologists and aging people. But of those, the people who are actively working on life extension per se, they're another order of magnitude lower, so that's a few hundred people. Would you agree with those numbers?
Like on life extension, I think I still have to figure out how big the field actually is. I'm always told it's very small. I'm also surprised like how like everybody seems to know each other. From the conference I went, like when I went to ARDD, it's like surprising like how many people I see here, and like it's especially people that are actively working on it. Possible,
but at least there are like big companies in this, Altos, Calico, Jero, you know, like all this.
Probably it's
in silico.
Probably a few thousand.
I mean, it's hundreds certainly. Maybe even low thousands. I think would be fair to say, if you're taking a sort of like a broad brush approach. And as I mentioned earlier, psychometrists, people who study intelligence, that's a few hundred people, 200, 300 people. Again, I probably have heard or know most of them.
And then people that actually try to...
And of those who are working to increase it, that would be maybe... I think a hard cap would be like 24 people like that.
It's like nothing. Okay. So
and like life extension. Well, and if you're speaking of not just of brain power, but of like money, Nvidia recently became the company with the highest market cap in the US and in the world, $3 trillion, I believe. I mean. So it's like huge, and like OpenAI, I think its valuation is something like 100 billion. You're talking of like hundreds of billions of dollars, and like the new clusters that they're going to be built in, that's going to be the $1 trillion cluster. It's a massive wave of techno capital. Just speaking about life extension, I think that would be in the billions, like hundreds of millions to billions. I think the numbers were like 3 billion a few years ago. Then there was a kind of like biotech winter, and then it dropped to 1 billion. And now it's probably going back up, I assume. So something like that. And with new cellulation, with intelligence enhancement, tens of millions, like judging by the
it depends on how broad you see it. Like if you say, like if you see embryo selection only, like then it's very low probably.
I mean, obviously you have
but if you count stuff like Neuralink, like there are way more people. like
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
like
Yeah,
if you count nootropics,
yeah.
there are people working on that.
Okay, yeah.
Like
I mean, but to be honest,
yeah.
with nootropics, they're like the equivalent, in my opinion, of the supplements
Supplements.
industry for longevity, which, as we know, is might have some marginal effects, but mostly snake oil. And similar figure. And what's the equivalent of Neuralink? Well, I mean, I don't think there's anything really like this. I mean, you have stuff like pacemakers, and I suppose you could view this as a kind of like a very rough equivalent of it. But
Pacemakers.
like
Yeah.
pacemakers to like keep the
Yeah.
heart beating. I actually just think this is a good comparison because what a pacemaker does is it kind of maintains a biological function that's critical, but which can't really sustain itself any longer. And what does Neuralink do? Well, actually, Neuralink right now, at any rate, it isn't to like increase the capabilities of a smart person to genius level. Its point is to deal with stuff like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, which again I'm very supportive of. It's a big increase in life quality for many people, and I'm very happy for them. But it's not going to like at this stage increase the level of aggregate brain power available to human civilization.
Yeah, they're more like maybe they're setting the cornerstone for later enhancement, like BCI computer. Yeah. Okay. So Sophia DAO, to like have a, as I understand it, it's just like this organization which will have a token.
Yes.
And if you invest in this token, you will get a bunch of like benefits correlate like with intelligence enhancement. You at the same time you support research.
Yes.
You support advocacy.
Yes.
You invest in companies.
Yeah, you give people who can just go to Uniswap and buy the tokens some level of exposure to that space. Although since it's not a legal disclaimer, we're not granting you exposure, but like in a sort of like apostrophes, we kind of are. Yeah.
Okay. How far are you with this project?
So I'm currently sort of still setting it up. When I'm launch it, I wanted to hit the ground running because there's a danger that you get a community up on Discord or whatever, and they maintain some degree of activity for a few months, and then they fade away if there's if nothing comes along to actually do it. So ideally, I want to launch the website and the community at about the same time, and to also by then have the legal infrastructure and the tokenomics and the token itself in kind of like almost ready to run.
Okay.
But I will not give any timelines. I mean, I'm hoping that it's an actually existing thing that you can go and buy by mid-year 2025. But I don't want to give timelines because that's generally a bad idea.
Okay. Okay. To finish up the intelligence enhancement, afterwards I would like to talk about Zoller for a bit. Is there anything that I forgot to ask you? Anything else you would like to say that we forgot to mention?
I mean, I think that's it. If you don't have any more questions, as I said, I think that it's. I've said all I have to say. If you want to keep track of it, best place to do this would be my blog, Elite Human Capital, ehc.zone. I'm assuming you'll sort of link to it.
I'll put a link.
The website of Sophia DAO is sophia.bio.
ehc.zone.
Yeah.
And Sophia.
.bio.
Okay.
Yeah, Sophia.bio. I mean, there's just a placeholder introduction right now. My blog, I don't just blog about bioacceleration and about intelligence. I blog about politics stuff as well. So it might not be your cup of tea, but it might be. But anyway, any announcements will be there as well. And the programmatic article, I would say, if Sophia DAO has a programmatic article, that would be the biosingularity is near. On ehc.zone. So if this podcast interested you, do feel free to check that out.
Yeah.
Actually, I would like to ask, like, before we finish the podcast, like a
Yeah.
bit about your experience in Zeller
Yeah,
City.
yeah.
Like,
With
so,
pleasure, yeah.
yeah, as people that are watching might have seen, we're both wearing Zeller City t-shirts.
Yes.
So we are actually currently in Berlin. It's the end of the 6 weeks of Zeller City, where people that wanted to that at least are interested in working on aging, or like trying to make aging optional. Like, of course, there are different levels of like interests, but like all in that direction,
Yeah.
came together, and we lived together for 6 weeks. I'm in the organizing team, and you were a resident for actually the whole time. Like, you were there for the first day, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. You were there for the first day, and you will stay till the last day.
Yeah.
So it's one more week. Yeah. Can you tell a bit about what was your experience here?
Okay, yeah, I mean, this is has most of the advantages of Vitalia, so an aligned community, plenty of interesting people to talk to over the vegetarian breakfasts. Although, I mean, I kind of like prefer intermittent fasting, so I mean, I might actually prefer the dinner to be a kind of the common thing. But yeah,
Yeah, we had a breakfast every morning.
yeah. So yeah, we
Communal.
gathered at the sauna every so often,
Yeah.
like doing other communal kind of activities, stuff, movie nights, stuff like this. So all the advantages of Zella, but we also get to be in Berlin, which is kind of curious because it's. Like one, I was expecting this, but one thing you really notice when you go to Germany is that it does seem like it's T minus 5 or 10 years. Like in many of the shops, you can't use credit cards if you have paid less
so
than
interesting about
10 or
Germany,
20
yes.
euros.
Yeah.
Stockholm, where I was recently, is the opposite. If like it's absolutely digitized, it's like T plus 5 years. So yeah, I mean, this is a kind of cultural distinction, perhaps linked to German conservatism and privacy considerations, which I know salient in this culture.
Yeah.
But anyway, apart from this, Berlin apparently has the highest density of startups and of DSI people of any city in Europe, alongside London, which is 3 times bigger. So yes, I mean, it is curious that Berlin has kind of emerged to be this hub. It's also a lot less expensive than London. It obviously has all the amenities you would expect of a first world cities, from cinemas to cryonic spas, and it's also cheaper, obviously, than London.
Yeah.
Like the Euro beer is definitely not something you'll ever see anywhere in London. It's like 5 GBP in the cheaper ones.
Yeah.
I mean, like being in the city, but amongst friends, or at least aligned people.
Yeah.
That's a very useful, very interesting, and very productive experience. And it's something I enjoyed a lot. And I'm really looking forward to the day when there's a global network of such places, and you could sort of like have an NFT on your wallet that grants you citizenship of Zella, and just have the freedom to travel about and seek exit from this sort of like nation state carapace that tries to tell you what you can and cannot do.
Yes. Okay. Thank you so much, Anatoly. We will have now, or soon, we will have a roundtable with the organizing team of Solar City. You prepared some questions, and you'll facilitate. It will be the next episode on this podcast. So, for people listening, you can click here. Or for people watching, probably. Thank you, Anatoly, and see you in the next one.
All right, thank you. It's been a pleasure talking to you. Yes. And EHC.zone, Elite Human Capital, is my main blog. Sophia Dao, Sophia, the Gnostic goddess of wisdom. Actually, that's the explanation of the name. Our website is sophia.bio. You can sign up for updates, and on Twitter it's the Sophia Dao.
Okay.
Thank you.
Will everything be in the description?
Yes.
Bye-bye.